Hello, everyone, and welcome to Millmac Musings, where Allison Miller and Gerard McClellan reveal the intersection between God and science for living wholeheartedly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As before, my name is Gerard. This is Allison. And as we move forward with this particular podcast, we wanted to go back briefly to adverse childhood experiences. And what I would like to do is I have a list to my left that I'm going to read just to give an overview of exactly what we're talking about in the different areas that this does happen. So what I'm going to start with is bullying, poverty, peer rejection, racism, death, multiple traumatic events, community violence, food scarcity, experience of the care system, poor academic performance, living in an unsafe environment, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional neglect, physical neglect, mental illness, domestic violence, problems with drug and alcohol use, parental incarceration, and parental separation. And that's quite a list. So you can see why so many people are affected by adverse childhood experience in one way or another. And so I would like to just turn this over to Allison at this time, because as we were talking earlier, we wanted to talk a bit more right now about sexual abuse. And would you mind starting?
Yeah. Well, I just told Gerard, I've said this before on our podcast too, what you don't know can hurt you.
Right.
And so I have a long-term experience with sexual abuse myself. And it is something that you think is normal when it's happening. You don't know that it's wrong, but I think our bodies know that it's wrong. And I think our hearts probably know it's wrong, but we're children and we don't know what to do about it. Mm-hmm. And that comes through tantrums. We try to express that through different types of behaviors that come after that. Mm-hmm. That people don't understand and think that we're just unruly children, that we're difficult, that we're hard to deal with, and parents typically don't know how to deal with children that mm-hmm. have gone through that, and they don't know that they have gone through that. But I have been through it. It started as a child, very early age, about 5 or 6 years old. And it just progressively got worse in my life. It seemed like it was just the cloud that followed me throughout my life was sexual perversion. And for whatever reason, I attracted that. And I'm not saying I'm blaming myself for that. I mean, it's just, I think it's because of the way that I felt about myself that I was an easy target for that. Mm-hmm. But sexual abuse affects us in such a way that we just don't have a clear understanding of who we are. We don't have clarity around boundaries. We don't have filters for things. We feel free to talk to anybody about anything. They have to be safe people.
If I can
ask me a question.
Yeah. But as far as you mentioned two things that, early on, and one of them is how you felt. And I think it really is as you were going through it, and the parents or your foster care people, whoever your caregivers are, it's dissonance when you're really separated from the traumatic offense, because that's how your brain can handle it. That's how your body can handle it.
Yes. I actually did not even remember that those things had happened to me until I was in my mid-40s. And so prior to that time, being separated from that, I really didn't understand why I made the decisions that I made in my life. They were very harmful to me. They were destructive to me. I chose people as significant others in my life that were not healthy for me. And I ended up going through a lot more experiences of sexual abuse, of rape, of just a lot of very harmful things to my emotional health, my physical health, how I saw myself, how I felt about myself, how I portrayed myself. I did not think that I was worthy of somebody loving me. And because I think because I didn't think I was worthy of that, I was running toward that and would take it from anybody. And I did. I took it from people who brought greater harm to me. And it was a very difficult life for me. My prior to 47 years old, I had been through many destructive relationships, and I felt like that, well, I'm the common denominator in that. What is the problem here? And you just hear people all the time talking about, well, if you've had these things happen in your life, it's your fault. And you're the one that can decide if you want to have it different or not. And it's not always the case. It's not a clear message, that we're a truthful message that we're giving to people that have been through these types of experiences, because it is traumatic. And then when it happens over and over and over, and it comes by people that you think love you and care about you, whether it's a significant other, whether it's an authority figure in your life, whether it's a parent, whoever it is, you look to those people to, have your good at heart,
Right.
and to want to help you to have a good life. I mean, you're not rationalizing that as a child,
Right.
but that is the design. And so, when I guess, I went through a very emotional, physically abusive period, and when I was 19 years old, and I was forced to do something that was definitely not something I wanted to do, and it was against every part of my being. And I think it just disillusioned me at that point.
Yeah, we're trying to bring it all together. I mean, what you've gone through is complex trauma, no question about it. So, as we talked about before, we have three areas of the brain. You have the prefrontal cortex, and the midbrain and limbic. So, when you're in the functioning mode of doing what, like for right now, we're in a functional mode of doing whatever, podcasting or whatever your function is that you're doing, you have a tendency to separate from the I don't want to know. You're just separating it and keeping it separate from there. And then what happens is you also come into an area of protection. And through that protection, you experience anger, you experience emotions, but we just don't sometimes understand the unprocessed emotions we have. And so what Allison is mentioning is very typical for a person who's undergone trauma, complex trauma of that nature. And then as you're looking to the people who are there to help you, that you trust, you just don't know anything different. So you're going through what we talked about before: powerlessness, shame, and lack of attachment pain. So those are things, and you just don't know why you're going through it. And it's your self-worth. Sometimes you just don't feel worthy, you don't feel loved because of the violations of the horrific acts of what happens. And you try to disassociate, as I mentioned earlier, to just try to separate it so you can survive it. So what happens is when you go back into that defense strategy that you get through it at that young age, you carry that into your adulthood. So it sounds like you had so many figures in your life that were not helping you,
right.
that they seemed to, the people you were reaching out to just weren't there for you.
Well, they just didn't have an understanding. They had lack of knowledge in that. There was not, there weren't people talking about this then. It was things that were, it was just literally swept under the rug. People did not talk about these things. And if they did, they didn't involve their children. And so, yeah, it causes you to carry a sense of shame, a sense of guilt, even because the way that people respond to you makes you feel like something's wrong with you because you're not behaving like they want you to. You're doing something out of, you're in the box and you're not following the way that the rules are for you. And so, but that all comes with a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge of what people go through when they go through these experiences in their lives. It is very destructive. It can lead us to make very destructive decisions.
Right.
And it can cause us to think so low of ourselves, our self-confidence, our self-esteem. I call it Christ esteem now, but all of that is torn down through those experiences. And that is I think it's through the hand of evil. I think that it was intent to keep me from being who I was created to be. But coming to terms with all of that, when you realize all of those things, it's not like you have to go back and dig all of that up. I did. I felt like it was very important for me to understand because there had been so much. And it was, I did that with Jesus. And I did that with a group of women who were supportive of me and helpful to me. But I really, truly did it through, taking those steps of going through and looking at the decades of my life and what had happened in my life. And the way that I looked at that was that God was there for me during that decade and how he protected me from, yes, that evil thing came in, that he protected me in that.
Right.
Because I'm still here.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm going to be okay because he says I am. He's going to work it all together for good. And so, but, sexual abuse it's in the way that we feel about ourselves, the way that we look at ourselves, our worth, our value, our esteem, all of that becomes interwoven in the fabric of our beings. And so everything that you're thinking, everything that you're doing, everything that you're saying to other people, it's coming through that. And it doesn't mean, it could just be in the way that you approach someone. It could be the way you dress. It could be the way that you interact with someone on a date. It could be not having boundaries for your life. I remember one time going to someone's house where I was told a mother was there, but there were no parents there. And so, just like thinking in terms of what are very practical things that we can do to prevent those things from happening in our lives and our children's lives. And hopefully our children will listen to us. I don't know if you want to go there yet and talk about our children.
Well, I just wanted to mention, just before we go there, one thing you also mentioned too is your behavior as a child. And the parents just didn't know. So what they would consider something that is combative or something that is just a child being a child, they're not really understanding the reason behind it all. And that's what we're trying to get at here, is to understand that what you have gone through was horrific. And then you would just what would happen in those cases, you would go into almost an area where you knew something may have happened or something to that effect, but you knew there was trouble there, so you were acting out with the correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
but I believe that with the temper tantrums or something like that,
Yes.
there's things underlying on that. And, when you have people who can see that, and that's, counselors or good counselors can see that, that's where they can dig into further. And again, what you said is so true. It's not going back to pull out the experiences of the act. You're just trying to deal with the issues of the inner child that had deal with that at that time, and not having anybody to talk to about it. There was nobody there, and this is what it sounds like in your life,
Yes.
that you could reach out to and say, this is what happened to me, and you've hidden it, so you've suppressed it, and these are unprocessed. And when you're dealing with that, you can bring that as again into your adult life, but it's a process that began as the child. So good counselors again will really be able to help go much deeper with you, and it's really about how they will show the love of Christ to you. It's
Yes.
not about anything other than that. It's not about pulling anything out, as I mentioned. It's just being there with you to walk this journey with you.
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah. Lots of tantrums, lots of dissidence, lots of anger, lots of not understanding why nobody understood me.
Right.
Lots of feeling that I wasn't good enough to be a part of whatever it was. Lots of not feeling chosen, not feeling important, and not feeling like someone could take enough time to really spend with me to find out what was really going on, because they didn't have the knowledge or the skills. And so, which is why Gerard and I are here today.
Right.
Not having anybody.
Yeah, that's very lonely.
Mhm.
That's a place where, as you grow older, you're seeing more and more of what's inside of you, and you don't like it.
Yeah.
Whatever the issue is, or whatever you've gone through. But in this case, we're talking about sexual abuse. From going through it as a child, it really can do those things. It just makes you feel powerlessness, lack of attachment, pain, and shame. Shame is huge. So why we're mentioning this, just from my perspective, is that we want you to be aware that we as the ministry, we have gone through certain things. So some of the things that we've mentioned here for the adverse childhood experiences we just mentioned a bit ago, I've gone through them as well. But all in all, as we're talking about what Allison has gone through, we have to understand that with Allison and her ability to want to seek help, and it really is the love of God that she was able to do that, because God was the one that held her together in every way as she went through it. I mean, sometimes you may not see that, but it's really about people coming alongside you who are good. And you mentioned your support group of women too. And that's just so wonderful to have, is to have a support group. And so many people don't have that, but when you do have it, that's a big help as well. And that's, so what I keep saying is it's Christ working through us. It really is. It's the love that he shows to us, and we have it through us to the people we're walking alongside with. And that's a big thing to come to try to just deal with some of the things you're doing, but some of the things you're going through rather. And as you're doing that, it's not about, again, any condemnation or anything like that. It's all about walking with you through the journey to live wholeheartedly. That's the bottom line on that.
Right. I think it's so important to be able just to talk about it with somebody that you feel very safe with, that you feel that it's not going to judge you or make you feel like you're less than because that happened to you. Because honestly, like Gerard said a few minutes ago, everybody has been through some form of trauma. And if they say they haven't, then they don't know. They're not being honest with themselves.
Right. And they may not know.
And they may not know.
That's
exactly. Because I was 47. I mean, I knew bad things were happening in my life.
Sure.
but I didn't understand what had happened to me way early in my life, and that it was just, and you think, when you are growing up and things that are happening in your life, you think it's happening in everybody else's life
Right.
too. You don't know there's something different
Mm-hmm.
Until you do. And then when you do, you're like, well, then what happened to me? And why is my life this way?
Right.
And so for me, it was about, as Gerard said, through Christ is where I found my freedom from this. And of course, it's been since 2006 where I met Jesus. And so there has been an enormous amount of work done since that. And before that, there was probably 20 plus years of counseling that really did not, it didn't do what Jesus did in my life. Okay. And so then having people come along beside me and then doing the work, being intentional on my own about, I love our how our minds operate and how our brains operate and how they create new neural pathways.
Exactly. Neuroplasticity.
Yeah. And, I know that has happened in my life. And I know, because I don't always think somebody's trying to hurt me anymore or out to get me, or I know my worth now. I know who I am. And I know the greatest thing for me out of all of this, first of all, I never would have imagined that I would be sitting right here today talking to people about what happened in my life. It was a secret, but more than that, to want to extend my heart and hands and feet to help other people. And, I just truly believe by us coming along beside other people that there is a power of healing in that. And again, people that are safe, people that understand, people who've been through it, but people also who have come through to the other side of it.
Right.
And so their filter is not to even talk critically about the people that harmed you. Because that can happen. You can be, and we do want to say it's wrong.
Right. That's so true. It really is.
Don't want to belittle that at all. It is wrong. What happened is wrong. It was not what should have happened in my life or anyone else's life.
That's a great point. And so it's okay to grieve.
Yes.
It's okay to grieve that these horrific things happen to you. We don't want to dwell there, but we want to know that we have to grieve. There is a grieving process. And that's where, what Christ does for us is he comforts us to comfort you. And that's something that I just wanted to add.
Yeah, I love that. I was just thinking when you were saying that, and I don't know why it triggered it in my mind, but I was thinking about, sexual abuse. Well, there's so many things that come with sexual abuse. It's not just sexual abuse. There's emotional abuse, there's verbal abuse, there's domestic violence, there's bullying. I mean, all of those are part of that whole dynamic, because if you don't think well of yourself, all of those things those things are happening in your life. Those things happen in my life. And it's just more and more and more to try to keep you down, I think. Where when you realize and you get you're more informed of trauma and how it affects your life, then you gain more freedom from that.
You do. Good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. One, I just wanted to mention a story that I was reading, and it really kind of goes along with that you don't know when you were going through it. And there was a father who was sexually abusing his child, and he was telling her that he was doing this so she would be ready for marriage to another, to her husband. And she wouldn't know. So what you were saying, you just don't know. You think that this is kind of, well, not normal, but you just don't know anything other than what you're going through.
Right.
And as you're, that just broke my heart to to see how confusion can set in after the fact as well. First of all, the confusion sets in because you're having an adult figure or a caregiver that you, as a child, you just think they can do no wrong. And you're reaching out for that. And so you're saying it must be me when things go, you have the emotions that come about. But I just wanted to mention that's a great point. You just don't know what you're going through until after the fact. Then you can see really what other people haven't gone through.
Right,
You know,
right.
so-
And it doesn't always have to be a parent or a caregiver. I mean, it can be a friend, it can be an uncle, it can be an aunt, it can be anybody. They say it typically happens through family members,
Yeah,
but
statistics agree, yeah.
neighbors, yeah,
Mhm.
there are neighbors and I mean, that's part of my story. And but the good news is that we can heal from this.
Right.
And we can come out on the other side of it. And I'm a firm believer in God works everything out for good to those who love him. And I believe that that's the only reason I'm sitting here. And I think maybe, what was meant for evil for me is now being used for good. And I'm so honored and I'm so blessed to be sitting here with Gerard and sharing this with you. And my hope is that, as Gerard's is too, I know that that anything we say or anything that we can do that helps you to grow away from the pain and more into the freedom of being who you really are.
Oh, that's a great point. It really is. And, when we go through it and we don't know it, but when we get to the other side and we kind of understand what we've gone through, we can go back to that inner child and then go back from there. And then what you do is bring it for the healing process. So again, you want to live wholeheartedly and, going through the trauma that we both have gone through, mine not the same as Allison's, but it's something that once you learn it and you learn it from a perspective that you don't want to go back, to blame people. You don't want to go back to you want to really understand forgiveness is key on that, but it takes a while. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to get the unprocessed emotions to come out and to process them the way that's healthy. And, we are being vulnerable. So you can understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. People have experienced it. You're not alone. And we want to be here to, certainly help you in any way we can. So I think the ministry is really geared for that. And we really want to follow up with that as we talk about these adverse childhood experiences. I think it's just great to be able to just bring these stories that we both have and others that we've done through studying and things of that nature, again, to make you aware that you're not alone. And we know that you can really begin the process of healing. And we're just hopeful and thankful that you're listening, watching, and our hearts are with you.
Yeah.
As a ministry. Our hearts, the Lord has put it on our hearts to help people. And again, when we go through things, the Lord knows that, but he knows how to use that, as you're saying, to help people and to bring that attention to whatever the issue may be. But it's such a good thing. So that's Romans 8:28, and it's really such a true thing that God uses what we experience and brings it onto the other side so we can help others.
Yes, and amen. Living testimonies of that.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay. Well, the only thing I want to conclude with is we will be talking. There was some, how can I say it? There were questions, and we will go into this a bit more, maybe in the next podcast, about how you as a survivor, when you have children, how to deal with correction of children, or how to discipline them, or how to understand them in a loving way. So we'll go through that to help people who like Allison has experienced this through and through.
Yeah.
So that's just something we're going to bring for another podcast. So you're all set?
Yes, all set.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us, and just God bless you and have a wonderful week. Thank you so much.